Stop everything you are doing right now because what I am about to tell you in the next few minutes could literally save your life or the life of someone you love. There is a virus spreading across the United States and across parts of the world right now that most doctors are not talking about in their waiting rooms, that most news channels are barely covering, and that is quietly sending people, especially adults over the age of 60, into intensive care units with almost no warning at all. It is called the Hantavirus, and today I am going to tell you exactly what it is, how it gets into your body, what it does once it is inside you, and most importantly, what every single adult over 60 must do this week to protect themselves and their families. If you are new to this channel, I am a physician, researcher, and the author of work that has been cited in leading medical institutions across the country. I have spent decades studying how diseases affect the aging body differently from younger bodies, and what I am about to share with you today is urgent. According to data published by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the case fatality rate of the most dangerous form of hantavirus, a condition called Hantavirus Pulmonary Syndrome, sits between 38 and 50%. That means nearly 1 in 2 people who develop the severe lung form of this disease do not survive it. And here's the part they are not telling you loudly enough. Adults over the age of 60, whose immune systems have naturally declined by up to 60% compared to a 30-year-old, are among the most vulnerable people on Earth to this virus right now. Before we dive in, I want to ask you something personal, and I genuinely want to hear from you because I read every single comment on this channel. Tell me in the comments section right now, how old are you, and have you recently been anywhere near a cabin, a storage shed, a barn, a garden, or any space that might have had mice or rodents? You might be surprised by what you discover when you really think about it. Drop your age and your answer below. I promise you I will read it. Now, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know about hantavirus, from what it is to how it spreads to what it does to the human body, step by step to real reported cases of people who have been infected, to the most critical protective steps ranked from important all the way up to the single most powerful thing you can do right now. We are counting down from 5 to 1, and I need you to stay with me until the very end because number 1 is the piece of information that could make the difference between life and death. And I will tell you right now, the number 1 item on this list is something almost no senior is doing, and the reason why is going to surprise you. Let us start at the very beginning. What exactly is hantavirus? Think of it this way. Imagine your body is a city and your immune system is the police force protecting every street corner. Now imagine a criminal so small and so clever that it slips through a ventilation shaft, your lungs bypasses every checkpoint and goes straight for the power station, which in this case is your cardiovascular system and your respiratory system. That criminal is the hantavirus. It is a single-stranded RNA virus, which simply means it carries its genetic instructions in a fragile but highly efficient ribbon of material that it uses to hijack your own cells and force them to make copies of itself. It belongs to a family of viruses called Bunyaviridae, and it has been present on this planet for thousands of years, living quietly inside rodent populations. The deer mouse is the primary carrier in North America. The rodent itself almost never gets sick. It simply carries the virus in its saliva, its urine, and its droppings, and it sheds it into the environment constantly, silently, and with no visible warning signs whatsoever. There are actually multiple strains of hantavirus found around the world. In North America, the primary strain responsible for severe illness is called sin nombre virus, which ironically translates from Spanish as the virus with no name. It was first identified in 1993 during an outbreak in the Four Corners region of the American Southwest, where a cluster of young, previously healthy Navajo individuals died of a mysterious respiratory illness that baffled physicians. In South America, a strain called Andes virus has been responsible for outbreaks in Argentina, Chile, and Brazil, and it carries the terrifying distinction of being the only known hantavirus strain capable of spreading from person to person. In Asia and Europe, different strains cause a condition called hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome, which attacks the kidneys rather than the lungs. All of these strains share one thing in common. They exploit exactly the kind of immune vulnerabilities that naturally accumulate in the aging body. Now, let us talk about how this virus spreads, because this is where I need you to pay very close attention. The primary route of infection is inhalation. You breathe it in, When infected rodents urinate, defecate, or shed saliva in an enclosed space, a garage, an attic, a basement, a cabin that has been closed for the winter, a garden shed, even the inside of an old car, the virus particles attach themselves to tiny dust particles and become aerosolized. When you walk into that space, when you sweep up droppings without protection, when you move boxes that have been sitting undisturbed for months, you inhale those invisible particles. They travel down your airway and reach your lungs, and the infection begins. Research published in the journal Emerging Infectious Diseases has found that the virus can remain viable and infectious in the environment for several days and in cool, dry, sheltered conditions, potentially even longer. Secondary routes of infection include direct contact touching rodent droppings or nesting materials and then touching your face, eyes, or mouth. There is also evidence of transmission through rodent bites, though this is far less common. And as I mentioned, the Andes virus strain in South America has documented cases of human-to-human transmission through close contact with an infected individual, which is why researchers around the world are watching it with extreme concern. The scientific references for everything I am sharing today are linked in the description below this video, and I encourage you to read them. Here is something critically important that I need every adult over 60 to hear. After the age of 65, your mucociliary clearance, that is the system of tiny hair-like structures lining your airways that trap and sweep out foreign particles before they can reach your lungs, declines in efficiency by approximately 30 to 40% according to research from Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. This means that the very first line of defense your body has against inhaled pathogens like hantavirus is significantly weaker in your body than it was 30 years ago. What a 35-year-old might inhale and partially clear before it reaches the deep lung tissue, a 68-year-old is far more likely to have reached the alveoli. Those are the tiny air sacs deep in your lungs where gas exchange happens and where hantavirus does its most devastating damage. So what actually happens when hantavirus enters the body? This is where I want to walk you through the timeline because understanding the progression is absolutely essential. The incubation period, that is the time between exposure and the appearance of symptoms, ranges from 1 to 8 weeks, with most people developing symptoms between 2 and 4 weeks after exposure. This long silent window is one of the most dangerous features of this virus because you can feel completely fine and have no idea that a storm is building inside you. The illness begins in what physicians call the prodromal phase. Think of this phase like the sky darkening before a hurricane. For the first 3 to 5 days, the infected person experiences symptoms that feel almost exactly like the flu. Fever, fatigue, muscle aches, particularly in the large muscles of the thighs, hips, and back. Headache, dizziness, and sometimes chills. Some patients report nausea and vomiting. At this stage, the vast majority of people, including many physicians who are not specifically looking for it, would not suspect hantavirus. They would assume influenza, COVID-19, or a common viral illness. This is the window during which the virus is quietly replicating inside the cells lining your blood vessels, called endothelial cells. As it multiplies, it begins to cause those cells to leak. And this is where everything changes. Within 4 to 10 days of the initial symptoms, the disease enters what is called the cardiopulmonary phase. This is the phase that sends people to the emergency room. As the blood vessels in the lungs become increasingly leaky, fluid begins flooding the air sacs. The lungs, which should be light and airy like a sponge, begin filling with fluid. The patient develops rapidly worsening shortness of breath. Not a mild breathlessness, but a terrifying, gasping inability to get air. Oxygen levels in the blood plummet. Blood pressure drops. The heart, struggling to pump effectively without enough oxygen, begins to fail. This condition, Hantavirus Pulmonary Syndrome, can progress from the first sign of respiratory distress to complete respiratory failure in as little as 24 to 48 hours. Many patients require mechanical ventilation and intensive care unit admission within a single day of their breathing becoming compromised. This is why rapid recognition of the disease is so critical and why I am talking to you today before you or someone you love finds themselves in that situation. Patients who survive the cardiopulmonary phase and with intensive supportive care in a modern ICU, many do enter a diuretic phase during which the excess fluid that has accumulated in the lungs begins to be expelled by the kidneys. Recovery can take weeks to months, and some survivors report persistent fatigue and reduced lung capacity for years afterward. There is currently no specific antiviral drug approved to treat hantavirus infection. Treatment is entirely supportive oxygen, mechanical ventilation, fluid management, and time. This is not a disease where a doctor can hand you a prescription and send you home. Prevention is everything. Now, let me tell you about real people this has happened to, because I want you to understand that this is not a theoretical risk. These are documented cases that have been reported in medical literature and by public health agencies. In May of 2012, a 37-year-old man from Yosemite National Park in California, let us call him Robert, which is not his real name but reflects the demographic of the case, stayed in one of the signature tent cabins in the Curry Village area of the park. He returned home and within 3 weeks developed rapidly progressive respiratory failure. He had one of 10 confirmed cases of hantavirus infection linked to that Yosemite outbreak that year. 3 of those 10 individuals died. The CDC investigation found evidence of rodent infestation in the insulation of the tent cabin walls. Thousands of visitors who had stayed in those cabins had to be notified and monitored. The outbreak made national news and forced a complete redesign of the cabin structures. In 2020, a case was reported from the state of Washington involving a man in his early 60s, let us call him Gerald, who had spent a weekend cleaning out a long unused storage barn on his rural property. He was a retired farmer in generally good health who wore no respiratory protection during the cleaning because he had done similar work dozens of times before without incident. Within 2 weeks, he developed what he believed was a severe cold that turned into pneumonia. He was hospitalized and placed on a ventilator within 48 hours of admission. He survived after 18 days in the ICU, but he spent the following 8 months in pulmonary rehabilitation and reported that his breathing capacity never fully returned to what it had been before. In Chile and Argentina, the Andes virus strain has produced multiple documented clusters of person-to-person transmission, including a 2019 outbreak in the Chubut province of Argentina that resulted in 29 confirmed cases and 11 deaths. Health authorities identified chains of transmission moving through households and even in one documented instance to a healthcare worker who had cared for an infected patient. The World Health Organization issued guidance in response to that outbreak, and the scientific references are available in the description below. In Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico, states within the historical endemic zone of sin nombre virus, public health departments regularly report sporadic cases, particularly in the spring and summer months when rodent populations peak and people spend more time in outdoor structures. In 2023, the Colorado Department of Public Health confirmed 3 cases of Hantavirus Pulmonary Syndrome, 2 of which involved adults over the age of 65. One of those individuals did not survive. Now, I want to talk to you about the 5 things every adult over 60 must do this week, ranked from important all the way up to the single most critical action you can take. And I want you to stay for number 1 because it is the thing almost nobody is doing, and the reason why is something you need to hear. Coming in at number 5 is this: do a complete rodent audit of every enclosed space on your property this week. Not next month, this week. I am talking about your garage, your basement, your attic, your garden shed, any outbuildings, your crawl space, and any stored vehicles that sit unused for extended periods. You are looking for the signs of rodent activity: droppings, which look like small dark grains of rice, gnaw marks on wood, plastic or food packaging, nesting materials made from shredded paper, insulation, or fabric, grease marks along walls where rodents travel repeatedly, and the distinctive musty odor that an active rodent infestation produces. Do not do this inspection by bending down and sniffing in enclosed spaces without protection. Stand back, open doors and windows first, and let the space air out for at least 30 minutes before entering. If you find evidence of rodents, do not sweep, do not vacuum, and do not disturb the area with a broom. I will explain exactly what to do instead when we get to number 2. The reason this audit is so important is that research from the University of New Mexico's Department of Biology found that nearly 12% of deer mice trapped in rural areas of the American Southwest carry sin nombre virus, 12%. That means roughly 1 in 8 mice in those regions is a walking biological hazard. And for your body, specifically after 70, your innate immune response, the rapid-fire first responder system that attacks pathogens before your adaptive immune system even gets mobilized, fires at roughly 40% of the efficiency it had when you were 40. You simply do not have the biological margin for error that a younger person has. The synergy tip here is to do this audit in pairs. Bring another person with you, both so that you have help and so that someone knows where you are and can get you out of an enclosed space quickly if you feel any respiratory distress. Now stay with me because number 4 is something almost everyone gets dangerously wrong. Number 4 on our list is proper personal protective equipment, and I need to be very specific because the type of protection matters enormously. When you enter any space with evidence of rodent activity, you must wear an N95 respirator mask, not a surgical mask, not a cloth mask, but a certified N95 respirator that creates a tight seal around your nose and mouth and filters out at least 95% of airborne particles. A standard surgical mask allows air to flow around the edges and provides essentially no protection against aerosolized hantavirus particles, which are small enough to slip through those gaps with every breath you take. You also need disposable nitrile gloves to protect your hands from direct contact with droppings or nesting materials. If the infestation is significant, a disposable Tyvek suit or old clothing that you can immediately bag and wash in hot water is advisable. I know this sounds like a lot. I know it feels like overkill for a trip to the garage, but I want you to think about it this way. The protective equipment costs approximately $15 to $20 at any hardware store. The average ICU stay costs between $3,000 and $10,000 per day. And no amount of money buys back the lung function lost to Hantavirus Pulmonary Syndrome. After the age of 75, your body loses approximately 35% of its pulmonary reserve. That is the extra breathing capacity that kicks in when your lungs are under stress. You have less margin than you think. Pair your protective equipment with pre-ventilation. Open all windows and doors to any contaminated space and allow fresh air to circulate for at least 30 minutes before you enter. This dramatically reduces the concentration of aerosolized viral particles in the air. Now let me tell you about number 3. And this is the one I see people get completely wrong almost every time. If you have found evidence of rodent activity and you are ready to clean it up, the single most important thing you must know is this. Never dry sweep, never dry vacuum, and never use a leaf blower to clear rodent droppings. These actions aerosolize the virus particles and create a cloud of infectious material that you will then inhale directly into your lungs. Instead, the CDC recommends a very specific protocol. You wet the area thoroughly with a disinfectant solution, either a commercial disinfectant or a mixture of 1 1/2 cups of household bleach per 1 gallon of water, and you let it soak for at least 5 minutes. Then, while wearing your N95 and gloves, you use paper towels or disposable cloths to pick up the dampened material and place it immediately into a sealed plastic bag. The bag then goes into a second sealed bag and is disposed of in a covered trash container. All surfaces where rodents have traveled should be wiped down with the same bleach solution. Mop hard floors with the solution. Steam clean carpets if possible. This wet cleaning method prevents the virus particles from becoming airborne and cuts your exposure risk by an estimated 90% compared to dry sweeping, according to guidelines published by the New Mexico Department of Health. For your aging immune system, this is not optional technique. This is the difference between a manageable exposure risk and a potentially fatal one. Right here, I want to pause and say something to everyone watching. If this information is valuable to you, and I hope it is, please take 5 seconds right now and click the like button below this video and subscribe to this channel if you have not already. I release new information every week that is specifically designed for adults over 60, and the YouTube algorithm only shows these videos to more people who need them when you engage with them. So please like, subscribe, and share this with someone in your life who you care about. It costs you nothing and it could save a life. Now, number 2, and this one surprises people every single time I bring it up. Number 2 on our list is knowing the symptoms with enough precision to act fast, because the window between the beginning of symptoms and the point of no return in hantavirus infection is measured not in days but in hours. Here is the specific pattern of symptoms that should send you to an emergency room immediately. Not urgent care, not your primary care physician's office 2 days later, but an emergency room today. The combination of fever above 101 degrees Fahrenheit with muscle aches, especially in the large muscle groups of the thighs and back, combined with progressive shortness of breath that worsens over hours, even if the shortness of breath feels mild at first, in someone who has had any potential rodent exposure in the past 1 to 8 weeks, is a medical emergency. You need to tell the emergency room physician specifically and loudly, "I may have been exposed to hantavirus. I was near rodents. Please test me." Do not assume the physician will connect the dots. In a busy emergency room, hantavirus is not the first thing on anyone's differential diagnosis list. You are the most important advocate for yourself in that moment. Research published in Annals of Internal Medicine found that patients who communicated a potential hantavirus exposure history to their treating physician within the first 24 hours of respiratory symptoms had dramatically better outcomes than those whose exposure history was identified later. Early recognition means earlier transfer to a facility with an ECMO machine. That stands for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, essentially an artificial lung that can support breathing while your body fights the infection. And earlier access to the intensive supportive care that gives survivors their best chance. After 65, your inflammatory response is paradoxically both weaker and more chaotic. A phenomenon researchers at Stanford University School of Medicine call inflammaging, which means your body may not mount the early warning signs of illness as robustly as a younger person's. You may feel less sick than you actually are. Take symptoms seriously, act fast. And now, number one, the single most powerful thing every adult over 60 must do this week. Are you ready? It is this. Have a direct, specific conversation with your primary care physician about your hantavirus risk profile before you clean, before you go near rodent-prone spaces, and before the summer rodent season peaks. I know, you were expecting something more dramatic, but here is why this is number one. A 2022 survey conducted by the American Geriatric Society found that fewer than 8% of adults over 65 had ever discussed zoonotic disease risk, that is, diseases transmitted from animals to humans, with their primary care provider. And yet, physicians can do something profoundly important for you that no amount of bleach or N95 masks can do. They can assess your individual immune status. They can review whether your current medications, antihistamines, corticosteroids, certain blood pressure medications may be suppressing your immune response in ways that make you even more vulnerable. They can note your risk on your chart so that if you arrive in the ER with respiratory symptoms, the connection is immediately made. And they can flag you for priority testing and transfer if you do become ill. There is no vaccine for hantavirus. There is no antiviral medication you can take prophylactically. But your physician can be your early warning system, your advocate, and your first line of defense if you have equipped them with the information they need. Print out this video's key points, take them to your appointment, and say, I want to talk about hantavirus risk. I live in or visit areas with rodent exposure. What should I know, and what should you know about me in case I get sick? That conversation for a 68-year-old woman in rural Colorado or a 74-year-old man who summers in a cabin in New Mexico could be the conversation that saves her life or his life. Your synergy strategy here is to combine this physician conversation with the rodent audit from number 5 so that you are walking into that appointment with specific, concrete information about your actual exposure risk. I cannot overstate how much more seriously an informed physician will take a patient who comes in prepared. Here is what I want you to take away from everything we have talked about today. You are not helpless. You are not at the mercy of this virus. You are an intelligent adult who now has specific actionable knowledge that most people, including most of your peers, do not have. You know what hantavirus is? You know how it spreads. You know what it does to the body and how fast it can escalate. You know what real cases have looked like, and you know the 5 things you can do right now this week to dramatically reduce your risk and your family's risk. Do the rodent audit. Get the N95 and the gloves. Learn the wet cleaning protocol. Memorize the symptoms that demand emergency action and have that conversation with your doctor. These are not complicated steps. They are not expensive steps, but they are the steps that separate people who are protected from people who are not. Independence matters. The ability to open your own cabin in spring, to clean your own garage, to putter in your garden shed on a Saturday afternoon. These things matter. They are not trivial. They are the fabric of a full, active life in your 60s, 70s, and 80s, and it is absolutely not too late to protect that life. ESPs, it does not matter if you have been cleaning spaces without protection for years. It does not matter if you have never thought about rodent-borne illness before today. Starting now this week, with the information you have right now, you can change what happens next. Your longevity is not just about what you eat or how much you exercise. It is also about the invisible threats you know to take seriously and the ones you don't. Today, hantavirus moves from the don't know column to the know and act column for you. If you found this video valuable, and I sincerely hope you did, please subscribe to this channel right now by clicking the red subscribe button below. Every single week, I bring you information like this that is specifically researched and specifically designed for adults over 60. Information that your busy doctor may not have time to walk you through in a 15-minute appointment. Share this video with one person today. One person, a spouse, a sibling, a neighbor, a friend with a cabin. You may not know it, but that share could be the most important thing you do today. And now I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, have you ever cleaned a space with rodent droppings without protection? And what is the one thing from today's video that surprised you the most? I read every comment, and your answers genuinely shape the topics I cover next. Thank you for being here. Stay safe, stay informed, and I will see you in the next video.